So thank you very much for the association for giving me the opportunity to share with you guys our latest research on the Japanese occupation of Hong Kong during the Second World War. Basically, I was told that I will have 20 minutes or so.
You can talk
about it. No. I shouldn't be the stumbling block between you and the dinner, so I'm going to keep it short. But I'm sure we'll have plenty of opportunities to exchange. And this time, we try to focus on my experience in using digital methods to really work on the research. So I have been working on this topic since the early 2010s. The first book I published in 2011, and the first book I wrote about the Japanese occupation of Hong Kong is in 2015. So I really shouldn't really beat the dead horse again and again. It's not a very good academic practice, but over the years after the publication of the books I wrote and the articles on the topic, I continuously received a stream of primary sources and new secondary sources from different corners, from private interested members of the public to new findings in the libraries and archives. So things are all around. So it's a much deeper, bigger topic than I originally imagined. So in a few years ago, I think around 2018, we started to really work on a new direction to really use digital. So sorry. Sorry. Thank you. No, to really use digital means to. At the beginning, it was actually a means to curate what I've written. Okay, to serve as a series of teaching materials and so on, and maybe even for other conservation or even tourism purposes. It's an outreach KT thing at the beginning, but throughout the way I was basically forced to revisit all these sources and come up with all these new research ideas and new conclusions. Basically, I now hate to see my own books. So basically, that's what happened. And in 2024, because of all these digital projects, I actually decided to rewrite my original book published in 2011 because I really hate that now. So I have to rewrite it and republish it as a new book. So I'm doing one about the Japanese occupation of Hong Kong as well. So in the coming 20 minutes or so, I'm going to share with you my experience in this, the difficulties basically, and some of my observations in that. So as I said, the Japanese occupation of Hong Kong was a familiar topic to all of you, I'm sure. And in all your collection, you probably will have something related about it. And if you know something that I don't know, please let me know, because I'm really hunting down every single bits and pieces of things about the Second World War in Hong Kong. Anyway, so many previous studies have done that, and they focus mainly on individual stories or particularly the soldiers, particularly the servicemen, British Commonwealth background, maybe Japanese, rightly so, because there was an intense battle, inhuman prisoners of war experience, civilian internment, etc., etc. But the city itself, the urban part, and as well as the rural parts of the city, actually didn't really deserve much attention other than very sweeping categorical description. Yeah, things were bad, starvation, and that's it. Yeah, so many details were omitted, partly because of the lack of sources back then, but partly also because of the lack of attention. So this is one thing. So when I was writing a book 10 years ago, I actually did the same thing, because I can't really go deep into the topic because I didn't really know the ground. Hong Kong was a very complex place. It's not big, but in terms of geography, it's very complex. Hills and different parts of the city, complex road system, and etc., etc. So I really want to first reconstruct my understanding, okay, of the urban area of Hong Kong, and then start to re-engage with the topic. And that's why I selected GIS. Oh, by the way, when I started to use GIS, I know nothing about it. The only digital the tool I use in my research is Microsoft Word. MS Paint. That's it. Okay. So I really have to learn the whole thing from the beginning. The good thing is I was given the luxury because I reached that stage of career in which I can try new things, for which I'm really grateful, because it's not for early career academics to do this. Anyway, so GIS. My understanding is that GIS really is a digital tool that allows me, as a military historian, to put very different kinds of sources in the same spatial context so that they can be cross-referenced and cross-examined. I think this is the most important part that I do in my research. As a military historian, I usually have to look at both sides. Battle of Hong Kong, Japanese, British, of course. But when I start reading all those sources, reports, etc., first-hand accounts, sometimes you will feel that they contradict a lot. Of course, but even the time zone in the Japanese and the British report were different. The Japanese reports were using Japanese time, the British reports were actually using Singapore time. Half an hour difference. Yes, at 1.5 hour difference. So yeah. So you have to really put things in context so that you can better understand the whole thing. And the GIS really serves this purpose. That's one thing. The other thing is, once you really place all these things in the GIS, you really have the better spatial awareness for the pattern, and that is really impossible to be identified from textual accounts. Yeah, what is many, what is big, what is small. Now everything seems to have a more measurable. I'm not saying I'm doing science, no, far from it. It's still 100% humanities research. It's still very much depend on the sources available. I'm not saying I'm doing precise science, I'm saying you can measure this and that, no. But at least we can have a better understanding of the spatial context in which things happened. I'm going to show you with some examples later. And after the Battle of Hong Kong, we started to work on the Japanese occupation, which lasted for 3 years and 8 months, from December of 1941 to August 1945. It's not really a long period. We say, for example, COVID lasted for more or less the same period of time, so you get the idea. The idea is to really put that experience into a spatial context so that it can be discussed with awareness of how the surrounding area affected such experience. That's one thing. The other thing is to highlight the diversity of experience. As I said, Hong Kong is not a big place, but the historical experience of occupation was extremely diverse. It's not just British and the Japanese and the poor Chinese. You have so many people in between. Eurasians, Filipinos, neutrals, even Norwegians were in Hong Kong. So many different historical experiences. Today, I just received from my research assistant a story about the founder of Jimmy's Kitchen. And he's from Turkey. And he was able to sustain the running of the Jimmy's Kitchen, of his restaurant, Jimmy's Kitchen, because he was from Turkey. And his son was born in the British territory, so he had a British identity, and he was basically captured and thrown into Stanley internment. But then he petitioned to the Japanese government saying that I'm actually a Turk, and he was released. So all these complexities and details actually will help us a lot to unpack the history. It's rather than just categorically saying that, oh, everyone suffered. So that's why we started to really try to put things in context. So the major sources we work on are these. Historical aerial photographs. We are super fortunate. In 2023, we were able to find from the National Records and Archives Administration, NARA, hundreds of aerial photographs taken by the US Army Air Force over Hong Kong during the war. So we can really recreate the urban environment in detail. That's one thing. The other thing is, of course, our historical maps. And that is a Japanese registration of so-called enemy properties. That means the properties captured by the Japanese during the Japanese occupation. So we work with many different kinds of sources. This is a property list. In my textual research, if I want to write a book, there's no point reproducing the list in a book. There's very little point of doing this. Or you may put this in discussion, you may talk about it in detail, etc. But I think the best way of dealing with this kind of sources would be to really put them in their original places. These are addresses of the markets built by the Hong Kong government before the war that were captured by the Japanese in December 1941. You have the physical description, valuation, etc., etc., and the uses by the Japanese and so on and so on. So all these details can actually be mapped on the GIS, and we can talk about the coverage of these markets. So it's not just about the Japanese occupation, really. You can really do social history, economic history, very easily with this kind of sources. And these two are, this one is actually a list of Japanese properties used by the British intelligence in Hong Kong. So they tried to find out where the Japanese were. So these were the lists produced by the intelligence agents who tried to really locate which building was used by a particular Japanese unit, so that when the Allies wanted to attack them, they could effectively bomb these places. This one deserves some explanation. This is kind of interesting. This is actually nice. This is actually a Japanese phone book. I found it from Hong Kong Library. And these are actually comfort stations, like one saw, of the Japanese Navy in Hong Kong, in Wan Chai. So they actually have the address, they have the numbers, and they have all the back offices that supported the running of the comfort station. This one, 四業組合, also exists in the phone book. So all these details can be very easily found. In a traditional textual study, you describe it, yes, good enough. But at the same time, if you do it with a historical GIS, if you do it with an interactive map, you can place it in context. You can recreate which particular building served that purpose, what's nearby, and what is the spatial context that led to that establishment. So we can talk about those things. Aerial photos. From this image, you can immediately see the advantage of using aerial photos. And of course, that one is the best map available if you want to study the Second World War in Hong Kong. 1 to 20,000 produced in 1945. That's the best map we have been using. But now we have this. You can actually magnify it. We'll show you later. And of course, you have lots of historical addresses. Historical addresses in the form of street maps, street indexes, and so on. So when you touch upon historical addresses, they come in different forms: street numbers, lot numbers, and so on and so on. So this is actually very complex. We're trying to simplify it by a combination of digital methods and historical GIS. And of course, you also have all these street surveys, very detailed 1 to 1,000 street maps, which, well, they were produced for the urban development. But in historical research, they can also be very useful. So basically, that is what we have been doing with not just the Japanese occupation of Hong Kong, but also with other historical period of time. We try to put textual accounts like all those lists and so on, and graphical sources such as aerial photographs, and cartographical sources such as maps and so on, and qualitative data. And one thing I really want to say about using GIS in the study of history is that qualitative sources sits very comfortably in GIS. There has been always saying, oh, it's a very quantitative thing, quantitative platform, GIS, Geographic Information System. But in reality, if you have enough spatial context, when you put several textual or oral historical accounts in those very clear spatial contexts, you will have some amazing results, which I will say a few words about it later. Anyway, one big thing we have been doing is to use an AI-enhanced semi-automated data extraction workflow to really try to extract data more effectively. The reason we use GIS is not just to put different sources together in the same context, but also to deal with a large amount of sources. So the amount of sources is such in such a scale that we can't really do it manually. So we have been employing the AI to help us. So now we have this. You probably all have the experience of trying to OCR something. And the biggest stumbling block for the commercial AI platform is the complex format, the typesetting of different pages. This one is a 1938 street index. It has a very peculiar, unique typesetting. So we have to employ an AI, small AI called YOLO, you only look once, to break down the format. And then do the OCR bit by bit. And we also developed a small platform for our research assistants and student helpers to really manually check. And the accuracy is now very, very high, so that the checking is actually quite manageable, if not minimal. Anyway, and then we try to load all this data in the GIS and in order to produce the platform. And at the same time, we are also training the AI model that we have been using because we have a local one. Anyway, so we are trying to customize different tools to really work on our project. Not just about the Japanese occupation, but also about different periods of time. So for example, we are releasing this. Oh, we actually have released it already. This one is Hong Kong Historical Address Database. So if you would just happen to need to find some historical addresses, for example, if you just have a lot number and you want to know the street number or you want to know the building or the house, the name of the house of a particular street number, this database can help. We basically OCR, we do it in collaboration with the Hong Kong Government Records Office. Yeah. When they allow us to put their logos in, we're like, really? Anyway, so when you search for street numbers, building numbers, and so on, you will get the location as well as others. And we will, please, I'm not sure whether this QR code works. Please tell me, because no, it's not working because the website changed. The website changed. No, it doesn't work. It won't work. Sorry, I forgot to say. The website will just change because I changed the name. Yeah. Sorry, I will share with you guys later. Okay, not later. Right after this. Right after this. Sorry. Anyway, previously, this is our workflow to locate something in the GIS, to locate a historical address in the GIS. You have very complex workflow of treating different lot numbers, street numbers, and terraces, etc., etc. Now it is reduced to this. Yes. Now it is reduced to this platform, and then you can get something fairly accurately in the GIS. So this is what we have been doing to use various digital means to really reduce our time and increase our capability. Anyway, the other tool is this. We just talked about it a bit, which is the platform that allowed us to do the OCR on the one hand, and at the same time also train that very AI model that we are using to handle Hong Kong related primary sources. So we have just launched this. This is something like this. It is a platform that allows you to open different projects. Say, for example, we have a small project for the Hong Kong yearbook, so we OCR the whole thing. And then you can upload different pages. After you upload different pages, the AI will try to segmentize different parts. So it identify pictures, words, titles, etc., etc. And then it will process and do the OCR at the same time. The output will be on the other side. And after basically this, on one side, if you try to segmentize, oh, this is a title, this is a title, this is a picture, blah, blah, blah. And then it will do the OCR, you can download the result, or you can adjust the result right here. The next step would be rolling out the database that means the result, and at the same time use the same result to train that AI that served you. So for a long, if we do it for a long time, or if we do it in a sustainable manner, I think we are fairly confident that we will have a, fairly usable version that is more suitable for Hong Kong related sources. Because why do I have to emphasize on this is because I'm not sure whether you have the experience of doing OCR when you hit Nathan Road. in early 20th century publications, such as newspaper, the typeset, the fonts, sometimes they lump together, right? So it's very difficult for external, common commercial AI untrained in this kind of sources to identify that word. So we have all these experience, and sometimes you have Japanese, and sometimes you have katakana, and then sometimes you have handwritten Chinese in a simplified way. So this kind of tool is designed to specifically deal with this kind of problem. Of course, if the words are good enough, any commercial OCR tools can do that. But we are now talking about Hong Kong history, so it's slightly different, I would say. The end product is something like this. You can have access now. It's a 3D map covering the entire territory. We can actually access it now. I think Apple machine. It's always a challenge for me. Anyway, the QR code is here. Let me try to go to the website. Yes, by the way, one very important thing, we really thank Hong Kong Baptist Library to host the very website. Big salute, because the history department has been doing a series of digital humanities projects under the umbrella of history and data, started by my boss, Professor Clara Ho. And she has been pushing us to do digital humanities projects. And Apple machine, up here. Yeah. I'm slow that up.
Not a good advert for pre-roll.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry guys, I have to go to another database so that database so that it can.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. So this is the interactive map. It runs on any devices. So you can really, it's bilingual. You can zoom in, it's a 3D map. So you got a mouse? 唔係，我可以轉 3D 嘅，但係要知點Okay. Yeah. Sorry guys, I'm not an Apple user, so I have to learn this. Oh, now I get it. Okay. It's that kind of intuitive. Anyway, so we have been using aerial photos and historical maps to sort of recreate urban Hong Kong in 1945. Because this is 1945 in Hong Kong. And the hills are not current hills. The digital terrain model is a 1963 digital terrain model created by the Lands Department. They originally do it for reference only, but they didn't really, it meant to do it for historical research, but we used it and they were very happy about it. And if you zoom close enough, you can see the quality of the photos. Yeah. So you can really see the quality of the photos. So it really helps you to put things in perspective. And since we put everything on the map, say for example, these are the shops, these are the comfort stations I just mentioned. And I did a little bit experiment with this is at one time last year, in fact 2 years ago, I was very lucky to interview a 94-year-old man. So who was 14 in 1945. He worked as an apprentice shipwright in Admiralty, ex-Royal Navy base, so under the Japanese control. So I asked him to describe, he was living in Causeway Bay, the other side. So I asked him to describe how he walked to his work along the street. And he just mentioned that he really had a very good memory, and he mentioned he remembered one particular shop named Chai Mo. So literally translated as my wife's house. Okay? But it's in Japanese, it was actually a Japanese name. Chai was a Japanese name, okay? I forgot the Japanese pronunciation. Anyway, it was actually one of those comfort stations. We found it in the Japanese phone book. We didn't tell him the name. He recalled the name, and I asked him to describe where it was. He said it was in a crossroads. So things can really, the description suddenly becomes a lot more detailed, okay? When you really put things in a proper spatial perspective. There's another story I would like to tell before I finish, which is, anyone live in the Sai Ying Pun area? No one. Good. Because I don't want to talk about it at night, and I don't want to have, for the Hong Kong you friends, but it's still far away from that, so no worries about that. Anyway, so let's go to Sai Ying Pun. There always has been talks about supernatural stories in this particular area. High-speed mental hospital, Sai Ying Pun Hospital. In the middle, you have the King George V Memorial Park, right?
Yeah.
You all know this. The MTR station now stands there, I think. Anyway, this is the street, this is High Street, and so on and so on. 4th Street, this is Bonham Road School, which now still exists. Very beautiful historical building. When we have this aerial photo, we also talked with that person. Because he first lived in Causeway Bay, he later moved to the 3rd Street, like Sam Gai, that's there. So I asked him, what did you see? He said he saw a mass grave, a hole. And he described how bodies were transported through a ramp up to the hole. And we read a similar account, at least a mention of the existence of a mass grave at a place called Fa Yun Zai from another written account of a man who lived in the same area of the same period. So he said there is a mass grave. We have no idea where the mass grave was until we have seen this aerial photo, which you can very easily see now. A huge crater there. And then we found that from the post-war records, there was an excavation. 2,631 bodies were removed from the place. Only one with a name though. The other were nameless, working class people who died in the last months of the starvation in Hong Kong. It was unrecorded. No official document talked about this. The excavation only talked about the number, never talked about the process. And we tried to find out any other people did mention it only once or twice by the Dongwa Group of Hospital. They were dumped there because all the nearby cemeteries were too far away. And there was no crematorium available. So all this social history really tells you a lot about the inequality in terms of space during the Japanese occupation, because the nearby area was actually occupied by the working class population who had to rely on, as you can see here, the maritime trade. These are all wharves, go-downs, warehouses, which relies heavily on the maritime trade. And as you can see from this picture, taken in February 1945, there's no maritime trade whatsoever. No boats, no ships, nothing. And right next to the harbor, the only ship available is a sunken one. No maritime trade. All these people were basically starving, just like you guys. So I'm stopping now. So this is basically the end of my presentation. All these ideas is to use digital means to deal with a large amount of information, which previously a single person or a team of historians cannot do. That's one thing. The other thing is really put things into perspective, put things into spatial context that we can understand. This is extremely important. So the digitization is a buzzword. Everyone is doing digitization. But I think the most important thing is you have to do it with a research question in mind, rather than keep rolling out databases which no one uses. So I'm not doing database, frankly, I'm not doing database. I'm very selfishly create a research tool for my own research. I have to admit that, sorry about that. But I have many excuses. teaching material, help this to understand, blah, 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 in order to get the resources. What's next? The same workflow applies to the entire Hong Kong history, obviously. This is way too obvious to be discussed here. There are certain technical issues, of course. It's not quite easy. Ethical issues, probably. But for example, the provenance of things. But I have to highlight this. This is really a joint work. It has been like this since 2018. Yeah, it's a joint work between historians in the history department and the library all along the way. Because, well, back then, when we started using it, it was the library people who taught us to use it at the beginning. And then you guys build the website, you guys host the website, we share the content, we share the sources as well. So this is actually a big thing. And last but not least, it's a really group effort. It's not, well, it's kind of a luxury, I would say. You have a team of like 6 or even 8 to work on digital projects. But without the combination of historians, developers, computer scientists, AI people, and of course librarians, this won't work. Yeah. So basically, this is the end of my presentation. And if you're interested in the map, it works. It works. Yeah, this would work. If it doesn't work, please tell me. I hope it works. It goes to the map. It goes to the map. Once you're in the map menu, click interactive map, and you will see the map. And if you want to make it 3D, use your 2 fingers to move in parallel. Okay, so that you can avoid the embarrassment I just had. Good. So this is the end of my presentation. Does it work?
Yeah, it works.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So thank you very much for your patience. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Kwong, for such fascinating and also intuitive, insightful presentation. I think we've all learned a lot. So now we're going to open up the floor for any questions. So anyone have any questions for Professor Kwong? Please raise your hand.
Hi, I'm very new to the GIS system. May I know how many times of tracking, human tracking, before you employ the GIS data to create your map? How many percent tracking, human tracking?
Human tracking.
Manually tracking, because it's only save your time to trace the primary source, I guess, right? So how many percent of tracking time that you will employ?
Wow. Thanks for the question. In fact, the map you have seen here now it contains around 4,000 features. That means points on the maps. Every single one of them actually are done by human, manually. So the AI and the OCR part only helps us to distill the sources. And then after human checking, they are plotted on the map manually. Yeah, most of them by myself actually. So you have to do it manually because you cannot really rely on mechanical. You can do it mechanically through Python, automation, GeoJSON. You can do it at the beginning, but you still have to adjust all the time. Yeah, I must say you always have to adjust the points because all these historical addresses, sometimes they are very fake. Yeah, sometimes they are not really accurate. So human tracking, I think, if in terms of percentage of time, I would say 50% of the total project time was actually used to check the content. Yeah, so it's actually a kind of a painful experience. But I would say the more you do, the more familiar you are with the spatial context, the more effective the checking would be. So it really adds up. So it makes it a lot more easier nowadays for us to spot errors, etc. And one particular point I have to make is the use of aerial photos. It really helps immensely. For example, when we were doing the Happy Valley area, I have to admit this is a really silly mistake. When we first do the Happy Valley area, we were using the current street number. We were using the current street number. We didn't realize there was a change in the street number in 1956. I was like, how do I supposed to know? Anyway, we find there is a house that witnessed a massacre in December 1941, involved a 42 Blue Pool Road. Currently, 42 Blue Pool Road is here. Yeah. If you look at the aerial photo, before I used the aerial photo, I pinpoint that in the previous projects about the Battle of Hong Kong. And I feel comfortable because I see nothing. And then now with the aerial photos, I'm like, what? It's nothing. It's absolutely nothing. This is Blue Pool Road. This is supposedly 42. Nothing. So I have to really find the historical street surveys to find out actually there's a change in the street number. And where is Blue Pool Road 42? It's built in 1940. Yeah. So yes, human tracking is essential first. Second, it takes up around 50% of your time. Yeah. Or if not more. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
So first of all, thank you so much for your presentation. I'm very excited because I'm fans of qualitative research as well. So my question will focus on your data, the primary source, because like you use like directory, like the list of property. So they come from different publishing authority, for example, government. So, you know, nowadays, or not nowadays, or even in the past, like every government talk their own story. So probably have you encountered a problem like a list of the property of or directory that the difference between published by British government and the Japanese government? Have you encountered this kind of like differentiation of your primary resources of the same location, for example, and how would you overcome or do the validation? Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. For this period, it's actually quite easy to overcome this because there was a clear cut in terms of control. So before that, it was British, and then the Japanese control. So they took over things. So once they took over things, the same address changed to a different owner. So for us, it's actually fairly easy. And it's actually very good to record this because we started at the gap of Hong Kong history. We started the whole historical spatial discussion started with the Japanese occupation. Because in the previous discussion, when we talk about Hong Kong history, it's always before the war, after the war, 金前戰後. As if there's no war in between, because no one knows what happened in between. Everyone starts from 1945 or ends in 1941. So when we finish this part, the good thing is that means when we go up or go down, things become a lot more easy because the gap is first filled. So when we're using Japanese phone books, well, of course it's about the Japanese. But when we start filling in the British or the telephone books after the war or before the war, then you can see the changes in the ownership. Sometimes you can see really, really interesting things. Yeah, I'll give you an example. We actually found some of the richest people in Hong Kong selling properties in Hong Kong during the Japanese occupation when they realized certain places were being used by the Japanese as military sites. Yeah. So some people on top knew the Japanese enough, and they said, oh, the Japanese Navy were using Causeway Bay to build a shipyard, and then they immediately sell all their properties from Causeway Bay. So this actually happened. Yeah, so things like this will actually, all these discrepancies, changes, that's exactly what we are looking for. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy, for the question. Any more questions? One more? Okay.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It's really impressive and intuitive to have this map. I'm wondering what is the most difficult part for you to do this project, the data gathering part or the system part or the IT part or the OCR part? So which part is the most time consuming or difficult technically for you for working for this project or research?
Thank you for the question. I'm Yeah, I want to give you three questions. Even if you want to ask the most important. The first, resources. Resources. It's very difficult to convince people to fund you. Basically, they treat you as your toy. Yeah. So it's actually you have to think of lots of excuses to sustain this. That's one thing. Resources, because it really is expensive. That's one thing. The other thing is technical part is actually not very difficult. The key to overcome the technical part is the PI has to know it by themselves. Yeah. We have seen too many examples of people relying 100% on contractor in terms of technical matters. As if once the humanity scholars finish the content part, everything can be pushed to the IT people. They sort out the rest. This won't do. This 100% won't do. So once you learn it, that is actually the easiest part. Yeah, that is actually the easiest part. The third most important, difficult part, I think, is the research question part. Because at the beginning, you can't really identify a research question. It's all trial and error. So it links to the first question, the rationale. So you have to explain why you have to do this, but the most difficult part is you can't really say it clearly before you actually do it. So in the Hong Kong funding environment, this is actually extremely disadvantageous for humanities scholars in Hong Kong, because when you submit a GRF proposal, they would expect you to have something in mind. But if you are using this kind of methods, you actually are doing an open research. So you have to make something up. Yeah, you really literally have to make something up that I expect to see things that I'm not sure whether I will see it in the GIS. But the current system basically would only reinforce the idea that if you don't know what you're doing, don't do it. So I think this is the most important part. Yeah, is to really explain why do you have to do an open-ended research. Yeah, that's the most important part, I would say. Thank you.